Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar that is hosted by Tender Soko on mastering tenders in Kenya, from opportunities to awards. My name is Maimuna. I'll be your moderator for today. So maybe we can give 3 minutes to those who are still joining before we can be able to start. In the meantime, we can introduce ourselves on the chat, the company you're representing, and hopefully some of the things that you're expecting to get from the webinar today. So maybe we can introduce ourselves on the chat. I can see James Maina. Hello, welcome to the webinar. So we
Thank
can
you.
just ourselves.
Oh, am I supposed to talk?
Hello, Caroline. I can see you're representing Maibeda. Welcome. Welcome, Sylvia. You're representing Robi Search Limited. So we can continue introducing ourselves as we wait for the rest to join. Welcome, Rose. You're representing Cascade Cleaning Services. Welcome, Jane. You're representing Jenny Vine General Supplies in Kisumu. Welcome. James, you're representing My ISP Limited. And then we have Eva representing Liberty Strategic Partnerships. Welcome. Elvis representing Info Century Solutions. Welcome. We have Njoki also representing TRYP Merchants. Welcome. We have June also from Info Century. Welcome. Joanne from Earthview Management. Welcome. We have Chris representing Damix. We have Michael representing Zamara. Welcome. We have Vivian representing Clyke. Welcome. So I think we can continue introducing ourselves. We give them the rest of the participants a few minutes so that they can be able to join us. Also, if you have a specific inquiry that you would like to be covered during the webinar, you can also share it on the chat box here. We have Nelly from Revamp. Welcome. We have Manasseh representing us. Welcome. Lynette from Kiosk Digital. Welcome. Joseph. Welcome. So as the rest join, I think we can proceed and get started. So the session is mainly focusing on how to access the tender opportunities in Kenya, the right tender opportunities for your business, and how to go about it to increase your chances of winning a tender. So whether you're a supplier, entrepreneur, or a business owner, so we'll give you the practical skills of the tendering process. So feel free to use the Q&A box to submit the questions that you have in regards to the specific topic. So I think Sylvia, you can go ahead and move to the first slide. So first of all, I'll just give a brief introduction of what Tender Soko does. So Tender Soko is a platform which gives access to tender opportunities to businesses and entrepreneurs. So through the Tender Soko platform, you're able to receive daily notifications on the tenders that are usually uploaded on a daily basis. And you get to have an access of a wide range of tenders across all the sectors, not only the public and government sector. We also have NGOs, SACCOs, private companies, faith-based organizations, all those sectors on the platform. And then apart from the tender adverts, we usually provide access to the tender documentation and submission requirements. So you're able to access not only the tender, but also the tender document, which makes it easier for you when you're applying for the tenders. And we usually encourage the users on our platform, if they have inquiries on the tender opportunities, they can also be able to consult so that we can be able to give them guidance on how to go about it. Because having been in the industry for 10 years, we are able to give great guidance on the tender related inquiries. So now on to the next, our speaker of the day, Edward. He's had intensive experience in guiding clients through the tender documentation process, that is applying for the tender. Require the services. Maybe you don't want to do the tender documentation in-house. He usually offers that service, so you can outsource the service from Edward. So with the experience that he has with the tender process, the regulatory requirements, so he knows all the nitty-gritties of what is required when you're applying for the different tenders across the different sectors. So he's had a track record of helping clients secure the bids through the documentation, the tender documentation that is. So that is what he specializes on. So here, Edward has supported dozens of businesses to improve their bid quality and navigate the compliance issues to ensure that they stand out in highly competitive procurement spaces. So I think as we proceed with the meeting, we'll also be able to share Edward's details on the same. So next, maybe now to introduce our speaker. Edward, I think maybe I can hand over to you of just giving a brief description of what Tender Soko does and the services that you offer, the expertise that you have. So I think maybe we can now proceed to dive into today's agenda. So Edward, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Here is Edward Miner. a tender expert who have improved and better knowledge about tenders. I've been in connection. I've also been in the field of tenders, helping very many people understanding the requirements of a tender, so that before any person wishes to do any tender, he has the best experience. He understands the scope. He also understands the timelines that are related to a specific tender. So being the speaker today and being the person who will explain or give brief descriptions of how tenders activities are done in this nation, I'll start by explaining what we have for tenders, that is different types of tenders. So for tenders, before anyone or any bidder wishing to apply for a tender, there are the scopes that you should understand so that you can be in a position to determine or make a decision whether you're going to participate in that tender. So first, I will explain the two different categories of a tender. So you are here, you are the bidder, you have the company, maybe the company documents, and you maybe decide to participate in a particular tender. So basically, what we have two major categories of tenders. One, we have the open tenders. I'll give a brief description on the same. And we have the special tenders. These special tenders, they are different from an open tender in this manner. In an open tender, this is tender that is open to anyone, any person who wishes to participate in that tender and meet the criteria or meet the required requirements. For an open tender, any person, as I've said, anyone is eligible to participate in this tender. May it be you belong to a special group, you can also participate in an open tender. But for a special tender, it is only those people or those companies that have these special categories that the government usually give some advantages when it comes to bidding. So when it comes to open tender, the differences between an open tender and a special tender. For an open tender, the requirements are a bit complex compared to that one of a special tender. In a special tender, what we normally have is that there are the documents that usually prove that you are a person who should be eligible to that advantage from the government. There are basically three documents that are eligible to this category of a tender. One, we have those people who are people with disability. They belong to that group of the disability, the people who are physically handicapped maybe, or have challenges in their health matters. They can be in a position to participate in a tender that belongs to the special category of people with disability. There is also what we call women AGPO. This means that women are normally given advantages by the government so that they are not victimized, or they are not in a position of participating in a tender. We also have the youth category. So basically we have those three types of AGPO that belongs to the special group. So when participating in a special tender, it is very important for any bidder to understand that he or she would be in a position to provide the three documents based on your category for the director. Then for an open tender, what we normally provide as a security for that tender is what we call the security, the bid security or the bid bond. I'll come back to that later as we continue with the webinar. So, as I've said, we have two different types of tender. So before any bidder participates in an any tender, I should understand whether it's participating in an open tender or a special tender. And what is required for you to participate in an open tender, and that of a special tender. So now, having understood that there are two different types of tender, the open tender and the special category, then it's also now good to understand where can you get these opportunities as a subject of this meeting. There are very many sources that you can get of different tenders. First, we'll have this platform that has gathered to have this meeting, that is the Tender Circle, Tender Circle Limited. This platform will be explained later as we continue with the meeting, so that each person can understand how we are able to facilitate the different categories of tenders that are normally advertised. So now, having understood the sources, as it will be explained to you later, now I want us to discuss what we call the pre-tender requirements. Now you have identified you want to participate in an open tender or a special tender. You need then now to get inside the document. You understand the pre-tender requirements. Every tender has its own requirements based on the scope or the particular project. Each institution or each procuring entity has its own specific requirements that are different from another institution. And each tender in each procuring entity has a different requirements based on the activity that they are intending to tender. So first, when we come to pre-tender requirements, you need to understand there are the mandatory requirements that each company should be having. One, we have the company registration document. This is a document that usually states the name of the company and the year that it was incorporated or registered. It can be the company registration document or a business name. Then after the company registration document, we have what we call the PIN certificate or the KRA PIN certificate. Each company must have that document, which goes hand in hand with what we call tax compliance. So that means when you're providing the tax compliance, you must include the PIN certificate. Then after that, we have what we call the business permit or the license that is issued to you by the county that you are residing from, or which the business is carrying out its activities from. After the business permit, then we have, based on the tender, if you are doing an open tender, this one will not apply to you. But if you are doing a special tender, then you have to include something that we call the AGPO certificate. This is a certificate that I said earlier, that if you are participating in a special tender, you'll have to provide that AGPO certificate. For it, it can be a PWD one or a women or youth. Then also based on the tender, if you are doing civil works, here is why you will include documents or certificates such as NCAs, depending on the type of the tender that you are participating in. If you are doing a building tender, you should include the NCA for building. If you are doing a tender for mechanical works, there is all sorts of NCA certificates. We have building, we have loads, we have mechanicals, and the rest. So after understanding the mandatory, then we also have the company details, or the company's director's detail, which is included in the company's start certificate on the CR12. If the CR12 is a document that states the electors, their details, addresses, and the percentage of shares that each of the directors has. So after the CR12, then you can include the director's ID to prove that the directors listed in the CR12, they are people maybe within this country or belong to by birth in the nation that you are participating in the tenders from. Then after the CR12, depending on the tender that you are participating in, you can be requested to provide details of how you can prove that you are able to participate in that tender by maybe providing what we call the technical requirements of personnel. You can be requested to provide CVs and the personnel certificates. That is, there may be the degree or the diploma that that person you wish to have involved in that project is capable in performing the duty. This also will depend on the tenders because they are so different. Like for civil works, you'll be required to provide details of people like engineers, surveyor, such. For supplies, you'll be required to provide accountant, procurement of tasks, and such kind of related personnel. So based on the tender, for you to understand what you are required to provide, you will now need to get to that part of the personnel. You get to understand these documents need this personnel, so that now you are able to come up with a CV and certificate of that individual for you now to have passed the technical personnel requirement of that tender. On also, in addition to the technical requirement, you can also be required to provide a proven record of how your business has been doing the specific activity or something that is similar to what you are bidding for. If you are doing maybe a general supply in stationaries, you can be required to provide experiences to prove that you've been participating in stationary activities earlier. So here you are required to provide experiences. You can provide what we call LPOs, depending on the requirement of you can also provide what we call award letters. These are documents that illustrate that you once participated in maybe supply of the stationery, as I mentioned, and you are awarded that tender worth a certain amount of money. You can also provide what we call reference letter or the recommendation letters or the contracts agreement letters. Because all these that you are going to provide, they are copies, not original documents. After the LPOs, then you can be required to provide what we call the financial submissions. This includes things like audited accounts. We also have what we call the bank statements. We also have what we call a letter of credit or the credit line. Depending on the tender, this one something that may vary. But for audited accounts, bank statements, letter of credit, you can also be required to provide what we call overdraft facilities, just to prove that you're in a position to finance that project. Also to show that, to show a proven record that your business has not been had a loss, maybe for a certain period of time. So for audited accounts, these are statements that are usually prepared by auditors. These auditors are personnel who are certified and they have the certificate of certification from the certified public accountants. So for the audited accounts, these are the criteria of what you should ensure that if you are going to prove or to provide the audited accounts, these are the criteria that should look so that you can make sure that you will not be disqualified for simple mistakes. You should provide the auditor's certificate, the certified certificate. You should also be in a position to provide the firms, the auditor's firm license is also a certificate. You should also ensure that your audited accounts are stamped from the first page to the last page. If you are requested to provide audited accounts maybe from 2024, for the last 3 years, maybe 2024, 2023, and 2022, you should ensure that they are stamped from the first page to the last page and stamped by both stamps, the company stamps and the auditor's stamp, and signed. So those are simple things that many people, they usually get a regret letter for not compiling to. So for the bank statements, you should also ensure that if you are requested to provide bank statements, before ensuring that they are ready for use in the document, they should be certified by the bank. The bank should stamp them, and you should provide a copy if you are required to provide a copy, but the tenders that will request you to provide the original bank statement. So the way you've gotten them from the bank, you should just put them in the document, just exactly the way they are without being tampered or putting a copy of the same. So for the letter of credit, this one is just a letter from the bank stating that they can provide a certain amount of money to your company in case you are awarded a tender with this amount of money, maybe 20 million, 30 million, such. So also depending on a tender, you can also be required to provide the methodology or the statements. You state how you are going to carry out a certain project or activity. So at that point, you'll be required to provide what we call work methodology or work proposal. And also you can be required to provide what we call a work program. It is just a statement or a program showing that if you are given a certain project, starting from this date, that if the institution wants the project to be completed for like a period of 1 year, you state the different activities that will happen for each month within that period. So after understanding the pre-tender requirements, now it's when you decide, you examine, do I have all this? Do I have these personnel that are required? Do I have these LPOs? Do I have the audited accounts? Do I have the bank statements? Do I have all those requirements that I've stated? Now, having determined whether you have them or not, now that's when you can be in a position to make a good decision, whether you're going to participate in that tender. And if you're not going to participate, then what is preventing you? What you don't have, how can you get it? Is it something that you can work on it? Like the audited accounts, the bank statements, the rate of credit, is it something that you can get within that period that you're required to submit the tender? Now, if now you decide now that you're going to participate in that tender and you have all the requirements, now you will have now to get into tender compilation or tender documentation. This is where now you will have to print the document and now ensure you read all the instructions and the requirements and now start filling the document. When you fill the document, there are very simple instructions that are literally inside the document. Like maybe you're required to prepare the form of tender in a letterhead. There are places that you should stamp and sign. There are places that are specified for the director to stamp and sign. Such a requirements. Just understanding them Now you have started doing the tender. Now you have the press. Now you have the area that you are required to put the costing. This is where that in each tender, depending on the type of tender, you are required to do the bidding price. Most of the bidders also they normally get addicted because of this area. One, you may overquote, thinking that if you overquote, you'll get the tender or you'll be awarded the tender. That is along our thinking, because underquoting or even overquoting, that is not a criteria that is used for those people who are evaluating the tender to award you the tender itself, the project to carry out the activities that are intended. So what happens in quoting? We have two major areas that each bidder should be conversant with. We have what we call quoting that will depend on rates. This includes tenders that involve allowed civil works, like the building, loads. Those one will need to use a technician or someone who is conversant with the rates. Quantity engineers, quantity surveyors, sorry, and engineers. These are people who are conversant with the rates. They just give you the rate, put the total. If you have an estimate, you can compare and decide the amount that you are going to put in the document. We also have those costing that a bidder should get them by him or herself. Basically, we've allowed what we call general supplies. General supply, this is why a bidder can use what we call a market survey or a market search. If you are required maybe to provide stationery like printing papers or stapler, here a bidder can decide maybe to go to a market, maybe, and get the exact prices of these items. After deciding, after getting the exact price of these items, the bidder can decide to put a margin, maybe of 35, maybe to 40 or 50%. So that means that if this stapler is costing 100 bob, you can decide to put a margin of 50%. So you'll cost that item at 150 shillings. So that is the general supplies. There are also those prices that you can get from the manufacturers. This will depend on a tender. If you are required maybe to put on something to do with solar works or any mechanical item like the generator, these tenders normally getting the prices, you normally need to go or get a contact with the manufacturer of the same item. The manufacturer will give you the primary cost of that item. Then it is the rule of the bidder to add the margin that he or she imagines the items should be costing. Under those products that you may get prices from the manufacturers, there is also some requirements that are in addition to such type of tenders, like the manufacturer's authorization. You are required to provide the manufacturer's authorization, and also the brochures or the catalogs. That specifically applies to those tenders that you require the pricing from the manufacturer. Then after that, now you have done the costing, you have filled the document properly, put all the requirements, the ones as stated, the mandatories, the personnel, exactly the exact requirement that you have been required by the document. Then you need to understand the way of submitting this tender, because very many people don't understand or don't have time to read the submission requirements that are in a different tender. Tenders will differ. There are those tenders that will require you to submit the documents into parts. There are those that require you to submit the document separately. That means you submit a technical proposal and financial proposal in a separate envelope or manner. So basically what this means, a financial proposal is anywhere that you put your values for the costing, anywhere that you state amount that you are bidding for. That is part of the financial proposal. So this one will also include as I had said, the form of tender and also that part that you are filling for the costing. It is usually provided in the document. Now the technical proposal, it's any other part excluding the financial proposal. Also, you can be requested to submit the document online. And maybe you are doing a tender that revolves around SMEs or these giant procuring entity like the KPC, KenGen, KAA. This institution usually require an individual to submit the tender via their portal. If you are going to submit your document via these portals, you will need to be conversant with the portal itself. Basically, for any company to submit these tenders online, you'll need to have a domain. You cannot submit a tender using a Gmail if you are required to submit online by this institution. So you need to have the domain email. Then you make yourself conversant with this portal, because sometimes you will find that you are required to submit a tender by 10. Then, because of the volume of the number of people that are maybe participating in the same tender, you try submitting it even Monday before, and you'll fail because of the volume of the people who are participating in the portal for that specific tender. So if you are doing a tender that is required to submit via online, you need to be conversant with the portal. Again, you need to submit as early as possible so that you are not late for the submission. For the SMEs, you can register either using email or any email, may it be domain or the normal Gmail. So you can also be required to submit a tender via a hard disk. So this means that you'll have to, if you have done compiling a document and it's ready, you'll need to do the scanning. Then you save the documents in the flash disk. Then you can submit the same, being well labeled. Also, when it comes to submission, it is very key and very important to note the submission dates. Sometimes people, maybe they normally participate in a tender, maybe it's closing in due 2 days, and you are starting in the last day. And the tender maybe requires to travel maybe from Nairobi to maybe Eldoret. So you not have a sufficient time to make your document more neat and ready for the submission. Also, we'll also like to touch on some areas that are key to success of any bidder getting an award. There are very simple mistakes that usually happens. I'll just list them and discuss them briefly. One, I'm assuming that now the document is ready. You are required to chronologically serialize the document. Serializing the document, this one should not be done with maybe a pen using hand. There is a machine that usually serializes the document from number 1 to the last page. It is very important to note that serialization can cost you a lot when it comes to getting the award or a tender. Very many people get regret letter concerning the manner in which they did the serialization. You should start from the first page to the last page. And in fact, in the last page, it is also very important to even put a declaration that you have serialized a declaration addressing the procuring entity that you have serialized from page 1 to the last page, maybe it's 200. So that you are in a position not to get disqualified, because this part is very important. The evaluators of these tenders, if there is something that they look very fast so that they can disqualify a person, is the manner in which you did the serialization. After serialization, there is assuming now it's neatly serialized, there's the manner in which you buy your document. You find some people, it is the last minute, and the way they have handled their document or they have done the binding, it's even more funny, because you are submitting the documents, papers, and the document itself is not in a complete state. Some papers are out, others are not sticking. So the manner in which you bind your document is very, very important. Also, to note, when you are putting your attachments, that is the attachments that you are required to provide in that tender, it's very, very important to put what you call separators. This is something to show the evaluators that under this section, we have this documents. Like maybe you have the mandatory documents, starting from incorporation, maybe to the business permit. Maybe starting a separator for personnel, a separators for experiences, separators for the financials, and maybe the methodology or the work program. So that is very important to put a separator. That makes your document so neat, such that the evaluators will not be in a problem or will not excuse themselves for not finding a certain document. Also, when it comes to attachments, it's very important, very, very important for you to satisfy your document, to certify them using the lawyer's or the advocate stamp, stating that you have put a copy of the original, because that is what you should put in the attachments. Your certification of the document, it should be done to anything that is a copy of the original. Any document that is in the document attachments that is a copy of original. This includes like a certificate of incorporation, the PIN, the tax compliance, and such document. Also, when it comes to submission of the document, it's very, very important to have a table of content. For you, this is done after you have serialized the document from the first page to the last page. It is very important for you to note that it is for you having a table of content. It will easily help in understanding that in this page and this page we have this and this page and this page we have these requirements and we have the other requirements. Now, I had talked about, there's something I want to go back to. I had talked about earlier about the open tenders and the special tenders. So in any tender, you are usually required to provide a security. For special tender, as I had said, you provide that document, the AGPO certificate. But for open tender, you usually provide what we call the bid security, or the bid bond. Under the open tender, for this special bid bond, you usually provide um, I was saying, sorry for the interruption. For the open tenders, usually provide a bid board. This is a letter usually get from the bank. It usually states the tender name and the tender number, indicating the validity of the tender so that you cannot change the prices until it's evaluated. Then for AGPO certificate, you are required to fill a form that is usually provided in the document. That is what we call tender securing declaration. Here, you are usually required to put the tender details, that is the tender number and the tender name. You're also required to put the validity of that tender, and also maybe to put directors maybe on contact person details, the name of the company, the signature, and such. So that is what happens in a special tender. Now let's go. Let me also touch on the company itself. There are those companies that are incorporated or they were registered for like 3 years or 2 years ago. So what happens in tenders? There are those tenders that are very strict when it comes to requirements. If you are required to provide like 3 years audited accounts, and your company was incorporated maybe this year 2025, it will not look okay when you participate in that tender, because most of the requirements will not be fitting for them. So what happens at such situation? For new beginners in tendering, it's very advisable to start doing what we call the pre-qualifications and the frameworks agreement. So at the pre-qualification document, here is where you get pre-qualified by a certain institution for a given period of time, maybe 2 or 3 years. In a pre-qualification, you are not required to provide the costing, because what happens, you just present your document, your registration documents, and maybe other documents that are required in that pre-qualification document, and present them to a certain procuring entity, maybe in a certain category of services. And this procuring entity, when it happens to have pre-qualified your company, what happens? You'll be given what we call, you'll be sent what we call the RFQs, or small short tenders. These are tenders that they don't have a much amount of money. Maybe you are required to put something that is below 5 million. So these are for companies that are for beginners. For you, for all the beginners, for them to participate in pre-qualifications or the framework, that would be highly advisable. As I've said, if you are pre-qualified for a certain category of services, may it be stationery, office, furniture, start, what happens is that you'll be required to quote maybe sometimes later for that, within that period of time, maybe it is 2 years, to quote for that particular item. You can be requested to quote for that item for even more than 5 times in that required time frame. If it is 2 years, you can be required to quote that item for even more than 10 times, depending on the type of the institution. Also, when it comes to frameworks, what is there's a very big difference between a framework and a requalification. For a framework agreement, what happens? Here you are required to give you are provided with a listing of all the items that institution maybe requires for a period of time, maybe 3 years. So in all those listing, they can list for you up to 100 items. You are normally required to provide the costing of each item. So what happens if you provide a favorable pricing on each item, you can be required to provide what we call you can be required to provide the item at a specific time frame. Basically, what I'm trying to say when it comes to framework, after you have quoted the pricing of all the items, they can choose like 10 items that you are required maybe to be providing to that institution for like 2 years or 3 years. The price that you have quoted with and the one that you have been awarded with for that specific item is the one that it is the price that will remain constant throughout that period that the framework required you to have quoted for. If you quote like today, if you quote like a barrel of soap at 100, if the time frame for the framework was 2 years, this price will not change. Even if the price of the bar soap will change maybe later. So it is very important to note that when quoting for framework, you need to be conversant with the item, and also you need to put a good margin so that if when the market happens to changes, you'll not be at a loss. Also, when it comes to a framework, it is very good to note that you cannot be awarded alone. In framework, it happens that almost everyone who participates in that tender will be awarded, depending on how you quote and the compliance to the documents that were required in that tender. Yeah, basically, those are some of the items that I wanted to cover in this meeting. Question. Thank you. Maimuna? Maimuna?
Thank you so much, Edward, for the presentation. So I think maybe we can proceed to the Q&A session. If you have any question, you can be able to type in on the chat platform so that we can be able to cover them. In the meantime, as you type in the questions on the chat box, I'll allow Frida to take us through how to find the relevant tenders. So Frida, over to you as we wait for the questions on the chat.
Hello. Sorry for that. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining our today's webinar. So I'm going to show you how you can be able to access the test and opportunities on our platform. So just as Maimuna had explained, so for Tender Circle, we mainly connect businesses and individuals to verify tender opportunities across various sectors. So I'm going to share my screen on showing you how you can be able to access relevant tenders. Whether you're a supplier or a contractor and you're looking for tender opportunities, Tender Circle is the right choice for you. Just a moment.
As As Frida shares her screen, we can continue putting the question on the chat box. Yes, Eva will be able to share Edward's contacts on the chat box. So maybe Edward, you can share your contact on the chat. You can see we have a few questions on the chat, so you can continue typing the questions that we want Edward to cover before we end the session as Frida continues setting up.
Okay, so this is how the Tender Circle website looks like. So if you're a beginner on the Tender Circle platform, so what you have to do is register. That is using the icon above for registering. But if you're an existing user, you have to sign in. So I'm going to demonstrate how the tenders are usually displayed on our site. So after you log into your account, it will automatically take you to your profile. So if you need to access the latest tender opportunities, you need to click on the tenders. So this is how the tenders appear on our site. So for these sponsored tenders, anyone can be able to access them since the procurement entity has already paid for the tender advert. So anyone looking for tender opportunities can be able to access the sponsored tenders. So let me just open one that is one of the sponsored tenders. And on that part whereby Maimuna had explained, you're able to get detailed tender information. So this is how the tender advert looks like. In case you have any inquiry, we provide clickable links and also contact information whereby you can directly contact the procurement entity in case you have any inquiry or you need support from their end. So that's how you can be able to access tenders on the tendersoko.com website. We also have another platform whereby you can be able to access specific tender categories, whether you're interested with insurance tenders, construction tenders, you can be able to access only specific tender categories you're interested in. So this is how the site looks like. So on your browser, you can click on tendersoko.co.ke and this is how it's displayed. So you also have to sign in. In case you have any inquiry on how you can be able to access the tenders, you can feel free to consult us at any point, and our team will definitely assist you on that. So now this is how the tendersoko.co.ke platform looks like. So it only features tender categories, offering more detailed information and helping you find exactly what you need. So let's say interested with only insurance tenders, you can be able to access only the insurance tenders. You get to receive email notifications for only what you're interested in. So let me click, for example, the construction tenders. So you can be able to see all the construction tenders, and it, as you can see here, we have 43 tenders under construction. So you can be able to access only construction tenders. In case you want to download the tender advert, you can be able to download. That is after you have an active subscription for that. I'm done up to there. In case you have any inquiry, you can just write it down and you're willing to assist you in that.
Thank you so much, Frida, for the clarification.